Welcome to another video from McFatter Tech Musser. If you like these videos, please click subscribe.
Storage. So I've already gone ahead, I'm logged into D2L, and I'll zoom that in for your benefit. And I'm going to go to Engage, Dropbox. We're going to scroll down. There's our Lab 4, there's our Lab 4 doc. I've already downloaded it and opened it. If we look here in Lab 4, we're going to be working with Server SA1 and Server Hyper-V. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to apply our initial config checkpoint to those. So I'm going to jump over to, let's see, what do I have open up there? Okay, now it's from our project videos that I'm doing. Okay, so here is my Hyper-V manager. I've highlighted Server Hyper-V. I'm going to select Initial Config. I'm going to right click and apply. It asks me if I want, and I'm sure. I say yes, I want to apply. I'm going to do the same thing for Server SA1. I'm going to go down to Initial Config, select it. I'm going to right click on it, select Apply, and are you sure? Yes, apply. So that's resetting our virtual environment. That's our first step. Our first activity, which is actually activity 4-2, is going to be configuring a new disk for use in a server. We're going to be using Server SA1. So while we talk about this for a moment, I'm going to right click on Server SA1. I'm going to tell it to start. Let that get up and running. And the description of this activity is you've just installed a new disk in your server and you need to prepare it for use. First, you should bring the disk online and initialize it. After that, then we can create our simple volume, we can format it. So we created those extra disks. Remember, we created a 20, a 15, and a 10 gig disk that we attached to our virtual machine. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to jump back over to my server manager. I'm sorry, back over to my Hyper-V manager. I'm going to double click on Server SA1 and access it. We're going to connect. And we'll log in. Remember, this server is not joined to our domain. Oh, caps lock's on. Need to take that off. So here's my server SA1. If we've taken a look back over here, we've signed in as administrator. In Server Manager, on the left-hand column, we're going to select File and Storage Services. I'm going to move this over to the side so we can kind of see everything at once. Resize this a little bit, make it a little bit easier to see. There we are. Okay, so I'm going to select File and Storage Services, and then Disks. There I can see our disks that we've got. So now mine, looks like I've already previously formatted the 20 gig disk because it's already got the GUID partition format, but it is offline. So I'm going to right click on it and say bring online. I'm going to say yes. And repeat that same step for the 15 gig and the 10 gig disks. Right click, bring online, say yes. Right click, bring online, say yes. So those 3 disks are there that we can now do whatever we need to do with those. I'm going to right click on the 20 gig disk. It's already been initialized. If I right click over here, I can see that on the 2nd and 3rd, the 15 and the 10, I've not previously initialized those, so those have that option. I'm not going to do that right now. I just wanted to demonstrate that. Our first disk is already initialized. That's why the option is not there. If yours has the option to initialize, right click and then left click on initialize. Let's see, in the Initialize-Disk box, leave all 3 disks checked. Okay, so if I select the second one and right click and go to initialize, can say yes, because it looks like they're saying initialized, all the disks will be configured as GPT. So we're going to do that. We're going to right click, we're going to bring all three online and initialized. On our 20 gig disk, I'm going to right click and select new volume. Once our wizard starts up, I'll click next on the first wizard screen. Now, we can see here server SA1 is selected. It's the only server that we've got listed to manage. Remember that if we had multiple servers listed here on this server to be managed, we would have multiple servers here that we could manage their disks without ever being logged onto them. We could remotely manage disks on servers just like we can manage a service on a server. We're going to make sure that that 20 gig disk is selected. It's highlighted in gray. It's right there. We're going to select next. It asks us, what size do we want to make it? We're going to change that 19.9 to 10. 10. And click next. So we're only going to partition half of the disk. For drive letter, we're going to select the drop down and we're going to select drive H. And here again, we're going to select next. For our file system, we're going to click the file system. We can see there's different options: NTFS and REFS, Resilient File System. We're going to leave this the way it is for the volume label, because the volume label, they want us to type in NTFS vol. So obviously they want us to format it as NTFS. We're going to click next. We can see a highlight of those settings that are going to be applied. We're going to click create. Excuse me. Excuse me. Formatting, updating, just about done. Before we do anything else, we're going to take a screenshot and we're going to paste this into our document. So I'm going to go down to my snipping tool, new, take a screenshot of that, and over to my document and paste it in. Right click, I'm going to wrap my text square. In fact, I'm going to make that a little bit smaller so it fits in my screen. I'm going to make that 6 inches. And if you highlight that, should be right. Let's see, is that where I want it? Click create. Yes, that's where we want it. We're done. I can click close. Now, in Server Manager, if I go up one level and select volumes, I can now see my drive D that's been formatted. We're going to continue working with the same server SA1. So no need to log out. We can just leave our Server Manager set where it's at. I'm going to right click on the Start button, get our context menu for different options, and select Disk Management. Our first disk, remember we start counting at 0 in our computing systems. Disk 0 is our first disk. That's where our boot partition's at, or our recovery partition and such. If we look down below that at disk 1, we can right click it and we're going to see different options. We can change the drive letter, we could change the path, we could format, reformat in this case. We could extend the volume because there's unallocated space. We could make the volume smaller. We could add a mirror. We could delete the volume. We're going to select Extend Volume. In the Extend Volume wizard, we'll click Next. And in the Select Disk window, we can add disks to extend the size. We don't have to use the entire disk. You'll see that disk 1, the remaining portion of disk 1 is already selected. But we don't want to use the entire thing. So I'm going to highlight the box to the right to select the amount of space in MB and type in 5,000. So effectively, we're going to extend half of this available space. We'll click Next and Finish. We now have a 15 gig disk instead of a 10. Now we're going to create one of those resilient file system yes. Well, okay, I'm recording this so you can always refer back. We start at 8 o'clock, remember. Okay, so our next step is to create a resilient file system volume, an REFS. So I'm going to right-click the unallocated space. I'm going to select New Simple Volume. In our wizard screen, I'll click Next. The space, we're going to let it use the entire unallocated area. We'll click Next. For drive letter, we're going to select the drive letter I, and here again, click Next. For file system, we're going to select the drop box, and we're going to select REFS. For volume label, let's label it REFS vol. We'll click Next and Finish. Looking here, we can see we've created two volumes. We brought a disk online, we initialized it, we created a volume, we extended that volume, and then we created an REFS volume as well. Let's take a look at the properties for our NTFS vol drive H. Right click, go to Properties. Here again, we can see the various options about it. There's also a quota tab up here. You'll notice that there's a number of different tabs. We could enable quota management, where we could limit the amount of space that could be used. There's different things that we can set. I'm going to close that properties screen. I'm going to right click the REFS volume and select Properties. You'll notice that there are no quota tabs there. Not the same options. We'll click Cancel. And now we're going to create a mirror volume. A mirror volume is a RAID 1. I'm going to right click on NTFS vol drive H and select Add Mirror. It says, hey, what would you like to use? Well, we've got that 15 gig disk. Remember, mirrors, best if they're the same. We'll select Disk 2 and Add Mirror. It's now going to convert this from a basic disk to a dynamic disk. We're going to click Yes. You're also going to notice that these colors change. I'm going to move my divider up a little bit. You'll notice that our basic disk has a dark blue header in disk management. The REFS volume had that kind of greenish gold border to it. And our mirror volumes have the deep red. Different colors indicate what type of disk we're looking at. Unallocated is black. So different visual indications of what type of disk we're working with. Now we're going to create a RAID 5. We're going to need 3 disks for this. We don't have 3 disks right now. So you'll see that it's still resyncing. Notice that both drives are being synced at the same time of our mirrors. They're both 84, 91, This is going to complete. I'm going to let this complete before we make any additional changes. Now it's healthy. If one of these drives were to fail, we could remove it, add a new drive, and restore the mirror, resync, recreate the mirror. I'm going to right-click on NTFS vol and select Delete Volume. It's going to erase all data on it, so we're going to select Yes. Now, you'll notice that it unallocated both. We're going to right-click on our disk 1. We're also going to, before we do that, we're also going to delete the REFS vol. So we're going to delete that volume as well and say yes. So we're back to where we started. I'm going to right-click on disk 1, and I'm going to select New RAID 5 volume. RAID 5, if you recall, requires a minimum of 3 disks. I'm going to click Next, and I'm going to add disk number 2, and I'm going to add disk number 3. As we do this, the maximum size drops according. Our RAID 5 volume can only be as large as the minimum amount of storage available. I'm going to remove them all again. I'm going to select disk 1 and add. I'm going to select disk 2 and add. You'll notice once I add disk 2, it shows I could have a 15 gig volume. But as soon as I add that additional 10, it says, wait a minute, we're going to use 10 gig from each one of these. The available space of the RAID 5 array is going to be 20 gig. Whatever the number of disks is, minus 1. I'm going to click Next. We're going to select drive letter H. I'm going to click Next. And for our volume label, I'm going to label it RAID 5 vol. Here again, I'm going to click Next and Finish. It's going to convert them to dynamic disks. You notice when we deleted our mirror, we deleted our volumes, they went back to being basic disks. Click Yes. It's converting. They're now all 3 dynamic disks, and it's going to create our RAID 5 array. It's going to take a little while. There we go. There's our RAID 5 array. We're syncing. While that's syncing, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my screenshot. So new, right there. Come back over here. Wrap, square. Let's see if we can move this up here. There we are. And I'll save that. I'll minimize my snipping tool so I can see my, not my Hyper-V Manager, but my virtual machine. Still formatting. Remember, we didn't tell it to do a quick format. This is doing a full format. It's going to be done here in just a few moments. While that's completing, I'm going to go ahead and see the screenshot that they took, the screenshot that I took. Very similar, right? There's our RAID 5 volume. What happens if I take this one disk offline? You'll notice I'm getting a notification of failed redundancy, but the drive is still online. If I look in File Explorer, as soon as File Explorer comes up, there we go, Right there, there's our RAID 5 volume. I simulated a drive failure, but the data is still online. If I right click and bring it back online, simulating restoring it, it's going to be a little bit, it's going to, if I select this reactivate, there it's resyncing, and it's going to be restored. Remember, this simulated a failed drive and then adding a drive back to it. That's why it's resyncing. All this time, drive H stays online. I'm going to let that complete syncing before I delete the volume, which is our last step in that. Our next one is going to be working in server SA1 as well. It's going to be just done here in just a moment. And remember, our last step is going to be right click and we're going to delete the RAID 5 volume. So if you want to go ahead and do that in the meantime, you can. We're going to be creating a virtual hard disk. There it's done. I'm going to right click. I'm going to delete volume, click yes, and there we're back to all our unallocated space. Still staying in disk management. I can go up to the top and I can select Action, Create VHD. I can create a virtual hard disk in my virtual environment. I'm going to browse. In this PC, I'm going to select the local disk C. For the name, I'm going to type in Virtual 1. Doesn't matter what we select here as save and type. I'm going to click Save. And you'll notice that it's Virtual VHD or VHDX. We can specify that here. I'm going to type in 5,000 for my size. That would be 5,000 megabytes or 5 gigabyte. We're going to click Dynamically Expanding. That way we're not taking 5 gigabytes away from our disk. I'm going to click OK. I've now created, if I scroll down, I can see there's my 5 gigabyte disk that I just created. It's mounted automatically, but it's not initialized. I'm going to right click on it and Initialize-Disk. And now it asks us, how would we like to initialize it? It's already got GPT selected, so I'm just going to click Initialize-Disk. I'm going to click OK. There's my basic disk. I'm ready to have a volume created on it. Notice that the icon beside disk 4 is different. That indicates that it's a virtual disk. I'm going to right click the unallocated space, select New Simple Volume, and instead of just giving us instructions, now they say, here's the way you're going to do it. We want the default size, we want drive letter V, and the label is going to be virtual vol. So I'm going to click Next, Next. I'm going to select drive letter V, Next. For volume, label, virtual vol. Before I do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Next. I'm going to click Finish. There's my formatted virtual vol. I'm going to take another screenshot. There's my screenshot, and I'm going to paste that in. Now, we don't have to go back to File Explorer to be able to browse these disks. I can simply right-click on it and say Explorer. and that opens up File Explorer for me. Now, if I go to my local disk C, there's my virtual hard disk, Virtual 1. You'll notice that it's simply a file. But to the computer, it also appears as a disk. I'm going to right-click the Start button in my virtual machine. I'm going to start Command Prompt, and I'm going to switch to drive V. I do that by simply typing V:, press Enter. That's how we change drive letters in Command Prompt. I'm going to make a copy of Explorer.exe. So I'm going to use the copy command, C:/Windows/ Explorer excuse me, .exe, and press Enter. One file copy. If I go back over to my File Explorer and select Virtual Drive, I don't even do that yet. If I simply look at my view, it just increased in size by 3 megabytes, because before it was 54 meg in size. We added data to it. Our dynamic disk grew a little bit. If I select my virtual disk on the right-hand column and right-click, I can eject it just as if it was a USB. File Explorer closed because it was no longer open. If I open up File Explorer again, go back to my local disk C, I can right-click on my Virtual 1 and tell it to mount, just like a DVD. There's my Virtual Vol V back again. I'm going to right-click, I'm going to eject it and dismount it again. In File Explorer, I'm going to go back to my local disk C. I'm going to right-click on Virtual 1, and I'm going to delete. And just like that, it's gone. It's not, it still shows up here. I'm going to close File Explorer. I'm going to close Disk Management. I'm going to leave Server SA1 run because we're going to be coming back to that. But our next exercise is going to be in Hyper-V. So I'm going to switch over to Server Manager, and I'm going to turn Server Hyper-V on. In this exercise, we're going to create and mount a virtual disk using PowerShell. We don't have to do it from Disk Management. My server Hyper-V is up, so let's go ahead and I'm going to double click and access that. I'm going to go ahead and get logged in. Server Manager is coming up, but I don't need to wait for Server Manager. I can simply click Start. There's my Windows PowerShell. Now, since I may be working with this intermittently, I'm going to right-click on it. I'm going to say More, Pin to Taskbar, because I want easy access to it. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to just simply click to Start PowerShell. You'll notice that it automatically runs it as administrator. We can see that in the title bar. I'm going to make my font just a little bit larger for easier viewing. we're going to create a new virtual hard disk, and that command is simply New-VHD, the name of the virtual hard drive we want to create. In this case, it's going to be virtual1.vhdx. And we're going to specify how large we want it to be. And that is the command size in bytes. And we specify 5 GB for gigabytes. Press enter. Creating it, and there it is. Notice that because it's a VHDX, it used the 4096 byte size. It's a little bit larger sector format. So we don't have to store, remember, there's many files that are very tiny. There's many files that are larger. If our sector size, the smaller our sector size, the more tiny little sectors have to be used to store the same size disk. So this is a little bit more efficient way of doing storage. We're going to do the same command, except this time we're going to create virtual2, and it's going to be a VHD. Since I'm lazy, I'm just going to press the up arrow one time, and I'm going to move my cursor to the left. And I'm going to backspace 1 and get rid of the H at the end of VHD. I'm going to change the 1 to a 2, and I can simply press enter. Creates my second virtual disk. Notice that the physical sector size on a .VHD is 512 bytes. It's not as efficient. If I create a 4 kilobyte file with a VHDX, it gets stored in one sector. In a VHD, it takes 8 sectors for that storage, so it segments it a lot more. We can mount that VHD right from PowerShell. I'm going to type in Mount-VHD, a space, and my virtual disk 1. If I go to File Explorer, let's see if anything shows up. There it is. Nope, that's not it. That's a different volume. Let's see here. Did that. If there were volumes already created, drive letters were automatically assigned. Let's take a look. I'm gonna type in the get disk command. Let's see what shows up. Well, there it is. There's my 5 gig. It's not partitioned, but it's mounted. So with this in mind, now I'm going to go ahead and take my screenshot. New, click anywhere, and there it shows my disks. I'll go ahead and paste this in. So we can see I've got this second disk on here. That's why mine says disk 2, not disk 1. In our instructions, it tells us that the disk, that 5 gig should be disk 1. So if you have the same thing I do, look for the correct drive letter, or drive number, sorry, not the letter, number. So in my case, my instructions, my command is going to be a little bit different. Instead of doing set disk space dash number 1, Mine's going to be set-disk space -number space 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and going to type that command, set-disk -number. In my case, it's going to be the number 2. And we're going to use the command is offline, and we're going to use false and press enter. That tells it to not be offline. I'm going to use the Initialize-Disk command. Saying here again, I got to use my same disk number, number 2. Yours might be 1. Use the correct number. Press enter. It's now initialized. And now if I repeat that get disk command, I can see it's now formatted as with the GUID partition style, GPT. Let's go ahead and I'm going to set a drive letter for it. So I'm going to do new, because remember it's online now, but it's not partitioned. It's not been formatted. So I'm going to use New-Partition. Here again, now I'm going to use my disk number, my number 2. Yours might be 1. Use the correct number. I'm going to specify a size of 4.9 GB. I'm going to add a drive letter, the drive letter V, and press enter. There I can see it's formatted. In fact, I can see my File Explorer wanted to pop up and let me browse it. I'm going to repeat my get disk command. My get disk, looking at my get disk, everything still looks the same. But I've got a drive letter over here. It's asking me, hey, I've assigned a drive letter. Do I want to format it? I'm going to format it using PowerShell. So this is going to be the step number 8, the format -volume command. Format -volume, drive letter V. I'm going to specify the file system to use. It's going to be NTFS. We're going to say -new file system label, and that label is going to be virtual vol. So we've created our disk, we've partitioned a disk, and now we've formatted the disk and added a drive label and our format style. And there it's done. If we look in disk management, if I right click the start button and go to disk management, move my divider up a little bit. There it is. Here again, notice the little drive indicator to the left of disk 2 is that bluish color, indicating that it's a virtual disk. I'm going to take another screenshot and paste this in. Coming back to my virtual machine, I can close disk management. And we're going to dismount our virtual disk. So we're going to use the dismount command. specifying my virtual disk, and simply press enter. We're going to delete the virtual disk. We're going to delete any virtual disk that exists. If we use a wildcard, the asterisk, it says anything that matches this. So if I type in del for delete, virtual asterisk, and press enter, it's going to be gone. Just that easy. It's gone. I'm going to run a shutdown command. Remember, we can run commands from PowerShell. So I'm going to type, we're done with server Hyper-V for this exercise. So I'm going to type shutdown space -s for shutdown, space -t for time, space 0 for 0 seconds. And it didn't work. Oh, nope, there it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and close my window. We're done with server Hyper-V. Now we're up to our fifth actual exercise. We're not going to get through all these, so once I complete this, once we get closer to when the high school seniors show up, I'm going to end the video at that corresponding activity, and then I'm going to allow you to continue the rest on your own. So this is back on server SA1. We're going to share folders, simple file sharing. Well, here's my server SA1. Still have it running, still have it open. I'm going to right-click my Start button and go to Disk Management. And it says create a 5 gig volume named Test Volume on our 20 gig disk. This should start to be getting to be easier, right? We've done this a bunch of times now. So I'm simply going to right-click the unallocated area. I'm going to say New Simple Volume. It already gave us instructions. It needs to be 5 gig. So what's the size going to be in bytes? 5,000. Correct. I'm going to click Next. Does it give us a drive letter to use? Yes, it does. It says drive letter H. Use defaults for all other parameters. I'm going to click Next, Next, and Finish. Oh, wait a minute. I went too fast. It said named test vol. What happens if you already clicked on it? I'm gonna act like I went too fast. And it's formatted as new vol. How can I rename that? I just right click on it. If I go to properties, I can rename it right here in the properties. Test vol. And apply. There we are. I'm going to go to File Explorer. When File Explorer opens, there we are. And we're going to create a folder named Test Share 1 in Test Vol. So I'm going to select my drive H. I'm going to right click, say New Folder. That folder is called Test Share 1. Press enter. There's my new folder. I'm going to right click on it. And I'm going to go to Properties. Okay, Not sure why it took so long to show up, but there's my properties. I'm going to select the security tab. We can take a look and we can see what our various properties are. Systems got full control, administrators full control, users have read list. That's it. I'm going to close that property screen. Again, I'm going to right click on the folder and I'm going to come down to where it says share with, and I'm going to point to specific people. By default, the administrator, because that's how I'm logged on, and the administrator group, notice the difference in the little icons, an individual person and two people, already are going to get access. I'm going to click the little list arrow. It's right here. And I'm going to, let's see, it says click test user. Okay, well, we don't have test user yet, but you'll notice that we can create a new user right here. So let's create a new user account. There we are. I'm going to, let's see, where's our, let's see, make changes to your user account, manage another account. Let's see if it'll let us do this. Add a user account. And the user name is going to be test user. We're going to set our same default password. And click next. Oh, it says, oh, I didn't type the same password. And it says we have to do a hint. So I'm just going to type in the word default. We'll click next. There's our local account. I can close my manage accounts. Now if I come back to here and go to share with specific people and click my down arrow, there's test user. I'm going to select test user and then click add. And you notice by default it gets read. We're going to click that little arrow beside read and give them read-write access. And share. Click the share button. Creating the share. We can see the share, and if we have email configured on the system, we could email the link to that. We would be able to send them an email with the link. Or we can copy and paste the link into an application, a Word document, whatever. Go ahead and click done. Excuse me. I'm going to right-click Test Share 1 once more. I'm going to go to Properties. Once my properties open up, I'm going to select the Security tab once more. This time, I'm going to go down and I'm going to click on the Advanced button. This is Advanced Sharing. Different view. You'll notice the Permissions folder is selected. We can see the permissions that are assigned. Access, full control, inherited from, none. This folder, subfolders, and files. So any subfolder that's contained will get the same permissions as this folder. Any files contained in this folder will get the same permissions as at the folder level. Let's go ahead and we're going to click cancel and cancel to exit out of our properties. They want us to, once again, I don't know why they wanted us to get out of the properties, because we're back where we're going to right click and we're going to go back to properties again. If we go back to properties and select that security tab again where we were just at, you can see there's our test user that was added. Because we gave them read write, that gave them full control. Read only allows them to read and list. We're done with this activity. We'll go ahead and we'll close our File Explorer and close Disk Management. Now we're going to share through advanced sharing. Maybe that simple file sharing just isn't adequate. We're going to go to File Explorer, and in my test vol drive letter H, I'm going to right click and create another new folder, and I'm going to call this one Test Share 2. And press enter. If I right click and go to properties, I'm going to select the security tab, so we can see the default properties that are here. Users can read, can list. Administrators get full control. System gets full control. Creator owner is a special identity. I'm going to select the sharing tab, and then advanced sharing. Remember, this is to share it across our network. We can check the box, share this folder. We can then select the permissions box. By default, everyone gets read. But you know what? We don't want everyone to see the folder. So everyone is selected. We're going to click the remove button. At this point, nobody has access to the share. We're going to click add, and we're going to type users, and then select the box that says check names. It fills in the local users. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click add once more. I'm going to type administrators, click check names, and click OK. I'm going to select users and click allow full control. I'm going to select administrators and allow full control. Now, remember, file permissions don't overwrite one another. Even though we're giving users full control here, because file and folder permissions only have them set to read, they're not going to have full control. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK. If I go back to the security tab and select my users, see, they still only have read and execute. On that security tab, I'm going to click edit. This allows me to add another user. I'm going to add test user and check names. Name is valid. I'll click OK. By default, when we add They only get read and execute and list the contents. That's all they can do. I'm going to click OK and close. So adding users, even though we share it across the network and give them full control, because that account is local, they still only have list. We can add a local user. There are lots of different ways to do these different things. Let's do this exercise with file and storage services. Then I'm gonna end the video and I'll upload it to YouTube and link it to D2L. So here again, we're continuing in server SA1. I'm going to close File Explorer. Looking at my Server Manager dashboard, I'm going to select File and Storage Services. I'm going to come to the section that says Shares. Another way to create a share. You'll see it says to create a share, start the new share wizard. I can simply click on that. I could also click Tasks and New Shares. Does the same thing. I'm going to click on that. Here's my new share wizard. By default, SMB Server Message Block Share -quick is selected. We're going to click Next. We're going to select our drive volume H. We're going to click Next. It says, hey, what's the share name? The share name, New Share 1. We can see it's going to create a path, it's going to create a folder. So it's doing everything for us in one shot. We're going to click Next. If we wanted to, we could enable that access-based enumeration. Remember, that only allows users with the permissions to see it. Anyone else does not. We're going to leave everything just set the way it is. We're not going to change any other descriptions, but I encourage you to read those descriptions. Encrypt data access, access-based enumeration. These are very important concepts. We're going to click Next. And this allows us to specify permissions. You can see that we've got the built-in users, creator owner, built-in administrators. Administrators have full control. Users have read and create. We're going to select Customize Permissions. This gets us to that same advanced security settings dialog box. If we wanted to change any of these settings, we could specify those exact settings. But we're not going to. We can simply see all the different options that we have here. We're going to click Cancel. We're going to accept the permissions the way they're set and click Next and Create. And just that quickly, it's done. So a one-stop shop to create that share, create the folder, do everything for us in one fell swoop. We're not going to have time to complete this next wizard, but it deals with hidden shares. When you create a share with a $sign on the end of the share name, the share exists, but it is hidden. That's the exercise that you're going to be doing in 4.9. Pretty brief brief exercise. Exercise 10 deals with mapping a drive, assigning a drive letter through mapping. A couple screenshots. Examining default settings for volume permissions. That's your exercise 11. And experimenting with file and folder permissions. That's what this is for, is to play, right? To learn. Disabling inheritance, seeing how that functions. and then restricting access to subfolders of shares. So you may have a share, but you don't want someone to get access to the subfolder. So anywhere here you see, for example, they talk about marketing. You're going to create, so you need to go into computer management. You're going to create users, marketing one and sales one. If I go into computer management, where do I go to create a local user? Kendall, where would I go if I want to create a local user? Local users and groups. I can simply expand that. I can select users. I can right click and start making user accounts. So that's what you're going to be doing in there. You're going to need to create those that marketing one and sales one user. You're going to, right here they tell you, expand local users and group, user folder, right? You can go to actions and new user. You can right click and new user. You're going to create a group, marketing G. You're going to add users to groups. So this is learning how to manipulate users and groups, creating different things. And at that point, you'll be done. So complete the additional steps in this. As I said, I'm going to end the video at this point.